The Roman Empire. Most people think the Roman Empire was founded on courage, honor, and discipline. But the truth is quite different. Rome was founded not by the sword, but by debt. Yes, you heard that right. Those massive armies, those glorious campaigns, those victories flowing down stone roads. Behind them all lay a massive economy, an endless expenditure. Because wars aren't won solely by military might. The food, arrows, spears, swords, the horses they ride for tens of thousands of soldiers. Everything has a price. And to pay for this price, Rome devised one of the greatest economic systems in history. So what kind of system is this? And how was it that Rome was able to wage war and yet prosper for centuries? This is the crux of the story. In Rome's early history, the army was made up of commoners. Every Roman citizen, when necessary, would take up their sword and armor and go to war. But as the empire grew, the system changed. Wars became longer, the fronts moved further from the center, and it took years to return from the fronts. This was no longer possible with volunteer peasants. A professional army was needed. And a professional army meant professional soldiers and their salaries. It was at this point that the Roman state began paying its soldiers. Salaries might have been small at first, but they guaranteed loyalty. Then they realized every new conquest meant new taxes, new mines, new slaves, and new revenues. In other words, war was no longer just a defense or attack, it had become a business model. War was financially profitable, and these profits financed new wars. It was a vicious cycle: fight more, win more. But there was also a dark side to this. This system wasn't just fueled by taxes and profits. As Rome struggled, it took out large loans from the wealthy, especially the bankers of the time. Were these bankers giving money for free? Of course not. In return, they received interest, privileges, and trade monopolies. In short, Rome's war machine was fueled not only by soldiers but also by investors. And it was at this point that fighting became a business. And a profitable one at that. Every conquest, every occupation meant new opportunities and new profits. Does this system sound familiar? Meanwhile, the rich got richer. Senators poured their wealth into land purchases, slaves, and foreign accounts. The poor continued to pay taxes with diluted currency, while the elite were protected by tax exemptions and insider deals. Public services collapsed. Corruption soared. The financial burden of endless wars fell most heavily on the lower classes, through inflation, workloads, and conscription. This wasn't just a military collapse, it was a monetary collapse as well. Now look at the world. Governments are running massive budget deficits. Wars are financed by debt. Central banks are printing endless money to cover the deficit. Some loan sharks are getting richer through defense contracts and exploiting crises. So who pays the costs? All these costs are paid by ordinary, vulnerable people in the form of inflation, declining services, and heavy taxes. Does this sound familiar? The example of the Roman Empire teaches us this. An economy based on expansion will eventually implode. The land that can be conquered, the resources that can be mined, and the enemies that can be targeted are limited. At some point, expansion will cease, revenues will dry up, and debts will become unpayable. Then the state will begin to squeeze its own weaker people. Heavier taxes, more money printing, tougher controls. This is clearly evident in the example of the Roman Empire. When the economy becomes unsustainable, the system rots from within. But the rich are always protected, public services collapse, and power passes into the hands of those who possess it. While the players in today's world may seem different, the game remains the same. Money and power go hand in hand. War becomes a highly profitable industry, and the poorest always pay the heaviest price. So what can be done? First, we need to see, understand, and learn this model. Most of us think inflation is ordinary. We accept narratives that present taxes as merely necessary. We accept narratives that present debt as freedom. However, history shows us what logic is, not madness. Understanding how the system works means not blindly participating in this game. Studying financial history teaches us not only how to manage a budget, it also teaches us how to interpret power relations, incentives, and the system's warning signs. Who gains the most when a crisis occurs? Who wins the contracts? Who lends the most debt? Let's start asking these questions. Because the lesson of history is clear. States don't collapse when the enemy walks in. They collapse the moment the math breaks down. If this has given you a new perspective, follow us. History shows you where to look, and I'll show you.